So I was playing PTCGL recently and I couldn't help but notice it's a lot buggier from the last time I played it. Has it actually gotten worse? Well, I stumbled across this video by Trust Your Pilot, the smartest and best player that has won 2 PTCGL tournaments. And before you say anything, no, he didn't tell me to say that.
Make sure you make me look good. Make sure you say that I'm the smartest player, the best player. You know, I won the first 2 TCG Live tournaments.
Okay, well, look, he didn't say it was mandatory or anything. I mean, come on.
Just that is mandatory. You react to my videos, you have to speak the truth.
Okay, then. Can I have my family back, please, Trust? I did what you asked. Now, in all seriousness, we're going to react to this video, which is talking about the recent update in PTCGL and how it's just caused a lot more problems. It's not a good thing, man. Right, let's go.
No, you're not experiencing deja vu. Yes, something similar happened last month where a new update broke Pokemon TCG Live. Thankfully, this time around, it's not as bad.
Hold on. Let's see what's being said here. I was playing a game after the most recent update, but when I went to check my I'm assuming discard pile, wheel or click and drag the scroll bar. Okay, that's nothing too crazy. It's obviously being hidden off. Arcanine V glitches when moving energy to another Arcanine V. I've actually seen that on his Twitter, actually, to be fair. And a feedback on animated background to the game. Oh, this one says can't scroll in a discard pile. Okay, so that's what it's referring to. The new animated background in-game it makes causes a drop in FPS and very laggy. If a setting could be able to remove the background animation so the game is better optimized with higher FPS. I mean, it's strange that it should kind of be optimized naturally that way, but yeah, I kind of hear that. Okay, so that's referring to that. Here's saying it's drastically affecting performance and is forced. Again, referring to the fact that you can't change it. Another note here, it feels so good to lose a match because the game just does not actually function at all. Who on earth has said that about a game before? It feels good to lose because then it means I have to not play it, or don't have to play it, should I say.
Because that's how all successful games are measured. Not based on how much each new update improves the game, but by how little it breaks it. In the previous developer letter from October, the team addressed a lot of the player feedback from one of the surveys, mentioning that players disliked the art style, including elements like avatars, board design, and overall UI layout. To remedy this, they gave us the new board effects, adding that they had plans to add more background effects in future updates. Well, the future is now because they have added those new board effects.
Oof, these board effects, baby. I initially was going to make a video on this as kind of a reaction. I reacted it on Twitch. Now, I was more reacting to these actual board designs, I guess you could say, itself, and what I thought of them individually, rather than what I thought of the implementation of them into PTCGL. Now, one thing to note is something like this here, right? These pink, like crystallized triangles going on the screen is just way too much, man. It's too overwhelming. And you probably saw it for a second there, and it's not really that pretty. There are other ones who are better. Like I like ones that were a bit more animated, but also static. So like the fire one, that was kind of a mix between static, but also a little bit animated, which was nice. But yeah, these did not look good, but some of them did look nice. I did also like the beach one. But anyway, let's keep going.
And for those wondering, these only came to the desktop versions of Live, not the mobile ones. I mean, could you imagine all of this on mobile? Instead of your phone being able to cook a hamburger patty, you'd be able to create a brand new sun. Anyways, I was optimistic going in because the early looks I saw of the board effects were promising. Then I saw all of them in action. Previously, when you promoted new Pokemon to the active spot, there would be a visual flourish that lasted.
Is that flashing?
Lasted for a few seconds, but eventually disappeared. Now it's constant, never goes away, and there's no option to turn it off in the settings. The fact that you can't turn off the effects is a massive oversight because
What's crazy, right, is this is an effect, right? There's complaints about people, about them bringing into this. There's complaints from people about them bringing in this effect and would prefer it turned off, which clearly shows that this visual upgrade, so to speak, isn't one. The one thing I didn't really comment on when I first initially reacting to this, it's strange how it doesn't fit the style of the game. Right, so you have the red and blue kind of border, which doesn't really resemble anything in real life, so to speak. More just a board, I guess, an electronic board that you play Pokemon on. Okay, fine, that's your theme, all right? This kind of doesn't fit it so much artistically. I mean, I get it. It's like a screen that plays these things. But it feels like it just doesn't feel right, ultimately. It feels like this is its own theme and style, and these are its own theme and style, and they are kind of clashing rather than meshing together correctly. And it's very clear that they've just kind of thrown this in to the original game just to add some artistic flair to it. Now, it's great that they're trying to add artistic flair and they're trying to add said personality, but it just conflicts too much, in my opinion. It's almost like, well, they're not willing to let go of the original vision they had for the game, which was the corporate, soulless is the way I like to refer to it, visuals of the game, right? The hexagons, the white colors, and the sharp and angled edges, or like curved edges, so to speak, as you can see here. Just very geometric and just lacking in artistic flair. I know I'm saying artistic flair a lot, but that's just all that's coming to mind. And they're not willing to let go of that, and instead just kind of trying to throw in these animations that clearly match what people are really looking for, just kind of in there. It's like, just throw it in the middle instead of really taking a step back and going, right, people don't like the initial design, right? They don't like the hexagons. They don't like the geometry. They don't like a lot of other things about the game as well. Let's just throw these little animations in there and hope that they're satisfied. It's just not going to work, right? They need to take a real step back and just go, right, it ain't working. Anyway, I'm waffling. Let's keep moving.
Darkness 1 is causing slowdown for numerous players. I've also seen reports of the dragon effect negatively impacting performance as well. Let me show you each of the 11 new board effects, starting with the good and eventually working my way down to the really bad. Ignoring the fact that the board change is way too immediate when a new Pokemon is promoted, I'd say the metal effect is the best. It's static and doesn't cause any sort of dizziness. Unfortunately, the developers cut a lot of corners here, just like they did when they improved the game speed. This time around, they merely put the new effect over top of the existing board so you can still play with the hexagons underneath. Next up is fighting. This is the perfect balance of movement plus static. There's little tiny effects going across the screen, but...
See, this is where I kind of disagree with him a little bit, but I guess this is just personal preference, right? I prefer something with a bit more life. I thought the rock was the most boring one because it was kind of just there, like it was just a picture with a couple particle effects over it. So I suggested something when I initially reacted to this where it was like, why not do the stadium thing and then just animate the stadium images to have some moving elements in there to make it feel alive, right? So if there was a stadium of a city or something like that, have like cars moving in the background or lights turning on and off or stuff like that, just give it a bit of life, right? Whereas this one's just a static image with a few particle effects. Now, don't get me wrong, it doesn't distract from the game, but at the same time, you want to find the balance of bringing something to life to make you feel like you're somewhere, and on top of that, making it not too distracting. And I feel like they've either gone too far one way or too far the other way. They've either made it incredibly distracting or incredibly dull. And as I said, the fire one I like the most, but even then, it's definitely not perfect.
And that's the end of the good board effects. Yes, there's realistically 2 or 3 good ones and 8 or 9 bad ones. For the fairy board, which you can only see in Live's version of Expanded, the crystals never stop moving.
See, that's
a common theme with these new effects is that you can't look at the screen without getting dizzy. Plus, for a few of them, there are random visual flickers every few seconds. Psychic is the...
Oh, yeah, see, yeah, we noticed that. We noticed the flickering of the
worst offender for dizziness. The developers seriously thought that trying to hypnotize the players into thinking that TCG Live is a good game would be a smart idea. If you want to implement something with such intense effects, you should have someone stare at the screen for at least an hour straight. If they report no ill effects afterwards, it's good to go.
The psychic one, I mean, I get it, right? It's a hypnotizing effect, which applies to psychic type Pokemon. When I was using this, I didn't think too much of it. I guess the one thing that's really distracting is the fact that everything down here is effectively static. Everything here is effectively still. This area is mainly still, and then there's just motion in this area and then static up here. It feels, that's what makes it feel a bit too separate. It's like the majority of the board is completely static, and then there's just a ton of motion in one focused area rather than it being spread out, I guess you could say. I don't think spread out is the best term, but just, you know what I mean? It's just a lot of focus on one area of sudden motion and other areas of none. So when you're looking at the areas of no motion, the area of said motion is going to be sticking out like a sore thumb in the corner of your eye. So if I'm looking down here at this Clefairy and then there's all this motion going on, that's going to be distracting. So that's one thing I think is important to know. It's not just the fact that it is moving, it's where the moving is taking place and where it's not. And in how that applies to where you would be focusing and playing the game primarily, which of course is your hand, your bench, your active, and obviously on the opposite side, the same, including the prizes and discard pile. So a lot of your eyes and attention are to areas of static, no motion, just simple, straightforward board state. And then in the middle, it's just, way, let's have some fun, which I think it not only distracts, but also separates it in a way that doesn't fit.
Now, while I'll admit that the Dragon board does look really cool when it comes to the effect of the blue Pokeball in the middle, the random flaming blue wings are weird. They're also likely what causes...
So I thought this was purple, which is just me, but this also applies to my original point, right? This is not too much motion to the point where it seems completely out of place. Anyway, let's keep hearing what you're saying.
Slow down for players. Still, transforming the Pokeball is a really nice touch. Water and grass both suffer from the same issue. The grass effect is fine, showing us grass blowing in the wind that does hurt your eyes if you stare at it for too long. But then there's the random flicker in the middle every few seconds. For water, it's also glitched, providing us with another random flicker every few seconds in the middle of the screen. I could maybe understand the developers not experiencing slowdown in their testing, provided they used high-end PCs, but how did this get past their testing? When it comes to lightning Pokemon, it's always raining.
I wonder they're testing how they test, right? Is it that they have too little people and too little time to effectively test it and just roll it out to let the people who actually play the game test it, which is not a good strategy, right? You don't want to release something unfinished every update, but it seems like they don't care enough to fully test it, or they don't have the time and money to do it, which is actually worse because it shows a lack of care from higher up, which is very problematic.
If it was just that, I might let it pass. But there's also constant lightning flashes happening on the board, causing the shadows on the pebbles to give players headaches. Fire's molten effect is cool, but the embers constantly zipping around the screen at hyperspeed are far too distracting.
That I agree with. That I do agree with. I like the molten effect. This is what I was talking about. There's something that shows it's alive, right? It makes you feel like you're on top of lava, right? You're at a volcano somewhere, you're playing somewhere, like you're playing against Team Magma or something, I don't know. Here's an idea, right? If they made this is just an idea. I don't think it's actually implementable, but this is just an idea of what I was thinking. If they made that the actual stage, right? If they were able to read what is the most common type in your deck, so to speak, right? Let's say you're playing a deck that plays a bunch of fire Pokemon. They read that and go, okay, for you, not for your opponent, for you, you get this battle screen. It is this magma screen, but it's the whole thing, the whole border, and like the bench is the same rock type design as this, and your hand is just there, just floating above it. All these boxed off areas are a part of the magma stadium, so to speak. So it's one big image that fits together. When you play cards up, it flares and you get some fire and stuff like that, or you get some motion here and there. There's a reactiveness to your mouse moving around. This is something that would be better in my eyes. And the reason I say just for you, because of course, if you're playing your opponent and they're playing a psychic deck, then, you know, obviously they shouldn't have a fire screen. So your opponent should sit there and go, right, okay, I'm playing a psychic deck. They should read that game and be like, right, okay, this person's getting the psychic board. So you're going to see different boards for someone playing the same game, but who cares? You're not seeing your opponent's side of the field. You're just not. Why can't they do that? Just scrap this soulless red and blue design, which I understand the theme, right? Red and blue, they've been doing it for ages. It's in PTCGO. Scrap it. Just make boards specifically for the types, read the most common type in a deck, apply that board to that player for the most common type. I don't care if I'm sitting here playing a deck that has mixed typing. Just do the one which has the most. I don't mind, right? I don't think that's going to be a big deal. I think that's a better decision. It makes sense. It's more consistent on a visual scale, because having something that's kind of half of the screen its own artistic design and the rest of it completely different doesn't make sense. Again, I understand it's meant to represent a screen showing this part of the field, hence you can still see the hexagons on these sides. But you either go full send or you don't. You can't have the best of both worlds, mate. I would much prefer to have a magma board here where everything is magma based, everything reacts. And what I mean by reacts is, let's say if I move something to the bench, as I do so, some of the magma flares up and some spark flies off or something down that line. Or have it kind of land on, just like Marvel Snap. When you play something in Marvel Snap, it kind of just drops and lands and has its own reaction, I guess, on the board. You don't have to make it too crazy. You don't have to make every card of every type have its own way of reacting and interacting with the board. Just have the board itself be its own thing. Let's say if you're on a water one and you play it, there's a little splash. You know, something like that. That is care. That is design, that is thoughtful, thoughtfulness, that is theming. This is just lazy.
Still, it's not the worst board effect they've introduced, so I guess that's something. The penultimate board is colorless. So you know how everyone loves the hexagons in Pokemon TCG Live and wishes there were just more of them everywhere? The developers heard your calls and decided to add sparkly effects to them. That's what you wanted, right? And finally, darkness. It's far too intense, makes the game literally unwatchable, and as I mentioned earlier, it causes immense slowdown for certain players. It's like they didn't think the psychic effect was strong enough, so they decided to make something 10 times more intense. Keep in mind that this is what the developers have been working on for the past 4 months. Not fixing the economy, not adding a game log, not adding new game modes, but instead new board effects that break the game.
That's so true. I briefly discussed this with him in his stream, actually, just briefly, about their priorities getting wrong. As he said, they're not focusing on economies, adding game modes, adding game logs, improving the game. They are listening, but they're just not doing it in the right order, and they're not doing it correctly, unfortunately. And this is harsh of me, but at the end of the day, they're not doing it right. It's just the truth. Does that mean that I don't like them? No, of course not. Does it mean that I know whose fault it is? No, of course not. I don't know whose fault it is, but it's happening and it's not okay. And I'll go into why it's not okay at the end, because I'm sure there's a lot of you thinking, Sean, it's just a game, calm down. But it does have genuine impact and implications, so it's not okay. Make the game work first. Then start focusing on the visual sides. If you really want to focus on the visual sides, I suggest taking a step back, making sure the bugs and stuff are fixed, making sure a lot of that is maintained, dedicate a team to making sure the game works, and then dedicate a team to its artistic design. It's clear they're not really doing that, or if they are, they've got it in the wrong way. There's either too much in one or too little in the other, or it's just one dev team who is in control of all of it. Or even worse, they've got a dev team and there's some higher-ups who are so out of touch but don't really care enough and just telling the dev team what to do, and the dev team can't say anything or get a word in because it's like, right, these are your instructions, follow them or lose your job. We don't know if that's the case. It may be that. It may be that they've given the devs too much control and the devs don't have the skills to implement what they want to implement or to develop a correct vision. We don't know whose fault it is ultimately. And that's one thing I really want to point out. We don't know truly what's going on. We've heard things here and there saying they do care and they do listen, but actions speak louder than words. This is showing the opposite, unfortunately. So is it that they don't care? Is it that they don't understand? Is it that ultimately, I don't know. And none of us do, only those who are developing the game. So they've got their priorities wrong. They're trying to fix the visuals and the game's breaking in the process, which, by the way, is a sign of bad code. If you add something into a game and it absolutely fundamentally breaks another core element of that game, that's probably a sign of bad coding. It means that something far back is already problematic. And when something is introduced and it causes that far back piece of coding to go wrong, they have to backtrack all the way and try and figure out that source and then come back down, which, if I'm correct that is the process, then it makes sense why it takes so long to implement things. And if they do, why when it does break, it takes so long to fix them. That's my thought process. I don't know enough about coding, but I've watched a few coding videos here and there and I can get the gist. And I think that's the case. Again, emphasizing I think, I don't truly know, but that's my idea. So these problems coming up is a sign of bad coding. So fix that stuff first, okay? Make the game work where if you get to a point of introducing something new, the game doesn't just break, okay? Fix that first, all right? Make sure the game is enjoyable, playable, works, functions, as he's suggested there, has other game modes that, improving on the expanded format, adding other things, GLC, all these kind of things. Focus on that first, man. Just make it function. And they started making that progress when they sped up the game. That was one of the only good changes I've seen, and the community agree with. It's probably one of the only good changes we've seen since PTCGL has come out, is actually making it faster because it was too slow. That is a gameplay change that definitely improved the quality of life of the game in general. A lot of people have problems with the gameplay, more so than the visuals. They just want to feel like they can play the game good. Ultimately, PTCGO has worse visuals than PTCGL. It's got less life, it's got less things going on, but it plays smooth like butter. Focus on the gameplay. Get that sorted. Get the game working. Then go to the visuals. You're doing it in the wrong order, mate.
And also, they put the gloating victory quotes into a speech bubble that's placed at the avatar's stomach. Believe it or not, I don't enjoy when Pokemon TCG Live breaks every month. The laughter is so you can't hear me crying, like why Deadpool's suit is red.
Let's see these just quickly see these errors. So if you go back quickly, I did notice them. There's an error here of the play, these blue play borders, which by the way appear on your hand when you can play a card. So if you can play Speed Energy onto Rotom, this blue border will appear. So they're appearing in your opponent's discard pile, they're appearing in your prize cards, and your prize card, one of your prize cards isn't sleeved. These are basics. These are basics, right? That I don't think I've ever seen PTCGO have an issue with. The only thing I've seen PTCGO have an issue with is that weird bug where the text floats above the card, right? That's the only thing I've really seen that makes me go, oh God, that's a bit annoying. But even then, it doesn't happen too often, but it still does. So we've got to, say that's the case. But that's just bad, right? You could just take a prize. Obviously, you can't actually take the prize, but why is it saying you can? That's a sign of, again, this has only appeared since they've implemented these visuals, right? So it's a sign, again, of bad coding. They've implemented these visuals and it's completely messed up the coding from far back. Now, is that a problem with the border itself when they changed it? Because this blue border with the triangle at the top wasn't the original one. I forgot what the original one looked like, but it wasn't this blue one. So is there an issue with that, or is there an issue with the visuals? What is the issue here? So if implementing something as simple as visuals is affecting the game that badly, it's a sign that the devs don't really know what they're doing.
The laughter is so you can't hear me crying, like why Deadpool's suit is red. I'm a huge fan of the Pokemon TCG and I want it to succeed, but it seems like the Pokemon Company doesn't. Regardless of whether or not it's in beta, anyone in the world can download live right now. If they experience even a fraction of the issues I see on a daily basis, they'll delete the game and never come back.
Exactly. And this is what I was leading to before about why I'm being harsh and why it does matter. This is a community we're all a part of. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you are a part of this community, you care enough about it. This is hurting it. As Andrew Mahone said, it's a brand damaging game, right? It is true. People will go to this game and think, this is bad. I'm not going to go anywhere near this. Whereas that could have been someone who, in an alternate universe, would have joined it and went, this is great. I'm having a great time. Oh, there's a community. There's a Limitless. There's a website you can play tournaments in. Let me get involved in this. I'm having a good time. And if you get a load of people like that who are also willing to talk about it and willing to share it through word of mouth and write good reviews, then the game expands. More people get involved. There's a bigger community. There's more events taking place. There's a lot more things going on. It's not only just for our personal benefit as content creators that we complain about this. It's for the whole community. It's for the whole Pokemon trading card game. This is the online representation of the Pokemon trading card game. The whole thing we love. On a competitive side, this is the sole representation of it online. The majority of people who play the Pokemon trading card game are playing online. And only a small expert minority play in real life in like regionals and stuff like that. A lot of people, the casual audience, the audience you actually want to be the base involved foundation of any game, the casual audience are here. And if you're getting that wrong, you are only allowing those who are committed already to genuinely play it because they have to, because it's the only way they can play something that they have loved for years. It stops new people from getting involved and loving what we love, what we all want to share and we all want to grow. This is having a terrible effect on that dream. It is like throwing an axe into PTCGO and saying everything you've done over these years, all the hard work you've done to get people involved and develop a community is in the bin. It is a bad thing. And then maybe someone goes, oh, it's a good thing because then I can, be involved in my little community that I like and effectively be a gatekeeper themselves. I don't think you understand, my friend. The more, the merrier. The more people who are into something that you are into, who can enjoy something that you enjoy, the more it becomes commonly accepted. So for those who I was back in the day, who found it hard to overcome the social stigma of being into a children's card game, the more people get involved, the easier it becomes to overcome those things. The easier it becomes to just accept who you are in some cases. I know I'm going a bit far with that and I'm getting a bit dramatic, but it does have an effect on those things. And ultimately, we all know the potential of this game. The potential is great. If Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh! Can go to the heights it has gone to now by just implementing an effective way to play online and a good way to play online, we know Pokemon can do it too. In fact, we know Pokemon is actually more likely to achieve even greater heights than those two have because it's the most popular one. And yet we've received this. No wonder people have been disappointed. No wonder people have been let down. No wonder people are scared because this threatens everything that they love in the Pokemon TCG community, at least on the online aspect of it, and does the opposite of achieving the dream that it promised, which was to finally put itself out there. That is why I feel like me being a bit harsh, even though I'm saying what I truly think is necessary and why it matters. Rant aside, let's keep moving.
Haven't even gotten to the rest of the problems. With the new update, you can now flip over your opponent's prize cards, take them out of the sleeves, and cause them to just completely glitch out. My favorite new glitch is a two-parter. So in the patch notes, the team said they fixed an issue where players are not able to close the discard pile if only cards with abilities that can be activated are in it. But in true TCG Live fashion, they fixed one thing and broke two more. Not only is the ability to scroll through either discard pile completely removed after the update, but now random cards will show they can be used at random times even when they can't. In my first stream after the update, Live said I could play Mirage Gate on turn 1 as a basic Pokemon, use my opponent's capture energy from their discard pile, and just so much more. Oh, and the bug where cards won't become highlighted when their ability can be used still isn't fixed.
Right, so cards who can be used don't highlight. Not always, but that happens, and I have seen that. And cards that can't be used are highlighted. Yeah, look, you just play your opponent's boss's orders, why not, mate?
Also, for whatever reason, there's no ban for Sky Sealstone. We're almost a week removed from the launch of Crown Zenith, and the developers don't seem to think of VMAX taking extra prize cards is a big deal. Not to mention the lack of updates regarding the compensation. I won't go into details on these issues because I literally made a video a few days ago talking about TCG Live's latest problems in 2023. And then they released this update making the game worse. On the bright side, they did fix Keldeo, Cobalion, and Altaria, which have all been broken since launch in November.
So if this was released recently, right, and they've only just fixed 3 cards that have been broken since November, it goes to show how hard it is to fix them. Either that, or that they just didn't fix them until they got to it last second and went, okay, let's just do that. Again, it's hard to tell what's actually going on, but either way, it's not good.
They did unban Furisode Girl, but Hisuian Zoroark and Galarian Slowking V are still banned because of the glitch with Echoing Horn. We're less than a month away from the TCG Live beta celebrating its first birthday and 2 months away from the Scarlet and Violet generation and potential closure of PDCGO. Yes. If you're a fan of the Pokemon TCG, neither of those events should excite you. They should terrify you.
That's it. That is absolutely bang on. They should terrify you. Who would have thought we would be here, right? You got to bear in mind, this is just the beta, right? So not everyone's playing this. But when people are forced this and we all have to play this game, there's going to be so many potential exploits and things going on that it's going to overwhelm them. I think it's going to get to a point where you're going to see things like, okay, Sky Seal Stone, let's say. Let's use that for an example. It's still not been fixed, yada, 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 right? Let's say that's completely broken and people are just playing it on the ladder, just going up their rank, so to speak, if rank is something that actually matters. But let's say rank is the most competitive way to play that game, and people are exploiting things like Sky Steel Stone just to be able to get to the top and get an unfair advantage, so to speak, because the ruling of the card has not been correctly implemented into the game. That's bad. People are not only going to stop playing because the game feels bad and looks bad, they're going to stop playing because the game's buggy and actually doesn't do what the game, some of the cards say. You can't have a client representing a game and it not even match it. That makes absolutely no sense. And that's why he's saying they should be terrified, because people just are not going to play the game. Like, there's people who play the game that love it and go, they lose a few times. Okay, they get a bit angry and they come back because it is what it is. But if you keep losing because of something that shouldn't be happening, that's called not fair. And people aren't going to engage in something that isn't fair to them or encourages them to exploit the game in order to actually succeed. That's not a good thing at all. And that's going to make people not play. And not only that, stop people from getting involved. They need to dedicate more people to this. They need to dedicate more skillful people to this. They need to make a decision. Are we keeping this? Are we changing it? What are we doing here? Because the game is confused. It is a mess. No vision at all. No goal. Just trying to keep up with the mess that it keeps making every time it updates. So I hope they take this seriously, man, and really step back and think about this. And I don't care who it is that I'm referring to, but who I am referring to is the person at the top. Whoever has the say. If you have the say, listen and make it happen, regardless of the time it takes, because you're wasting your time on a product that is doomed to fail. Why keep updating it? Why keep adding these changes if it's making it worse? If you want something to succeed and it's not working, if you keep going down the same road, it isn't going to succeed. If you're making something and you don't care if it succeeds, why are you making it? So I'm going to go on the assumption that you do care. So please take it seriously. And if you feel like the people you have or you, the people yourselves, are not capable of making it succeed, find people who will, because there are people out there. But again, I'm saying that not truly knowing what is going on. So I could be talking absolute nonsense out my behind. That's fine, I guess. But all of this points to incompetence, either a lack of care or a lack of understanding. So it's either no skill or no care. Right, I'm ranting too much now. We're going to leave it there. Yes, I'm going to echo that. We should be terrified, but what choice do we have?